my name is Alex Kent. After listening to episode 362 of the Accidental Tech podcast earlier today, and specifically listening to John Siracusa's frustration in Xcode when building his front and center app, and talking about how he spent a lot of time pixel aligning views to get everything just so, and his frustration that Xcode doesn't support you more in creating what could be considered a correct human interface guideline conformant view layout. I was a little bit curious. I thought Xcode does support doing these things, I'm sure of it. So I'm going to make a video walking through building the first preference screen of the front and center app in Xcode with Autolayout. And hopefully you'll see how it does support you. Okay, so this view. What have we got? It's a fixed width view, there is no resize. It's tabs, 2 tabs, general and exclude. Then we've got 2 main types of things, haven't we? We've got controls, so these 2 pop-up menus, and some checkboxes. So the controls, which are all aligned, left align along that edge. Standard spacing to their labels, so left labels, right control for all of these. And then we've got full width description labels underneath, divided by horizontal bars. Okay, and it looks to me like this pop-up button is vertically, maybe slightly offset from horizontally centered. Let's build that out. So here we are in Xcode. This is an empty storyboard from a new project. Let's just make this view a bit closer to the height we need. And then let's try not to type in any other fixed numbers from now on. So, tabs we need. You can, in Interface Builder, do this. Resize things to the size you want and get it to do all the little blue lines and the snaps and so on. But for Autolayout, you typically don't really need to. You can just drag from the view that you're trying to arrange. In this case, drag between the 2 views that you're trying to build a relationship between, because that's what's to keep in mind. What you should keep in mind when you're building Autolayout is that you're building a description of the relationships between the views. So from the tabs to its super view, we want constraints for all of these: leading, top, trailing, bottom. Yes. And you see it's built constraints on each side, top, bottom, right, left, to strap this tab view into place. And these have all got fixed values. But the great thing is we can delete these fixed values, and those fixed values will be replaced with default. And now this view is perfectly aligned using defaults all the way along. I didn't have to do anything. This tab is called General. This one is called Exclude. Okay, let's switch back to General. And then we need, what do we need? We need a pop-up menu. We need a couple of those. We need some labels. One somewhere there, one somewhere there. We need some multi-line labels. 1, 2, 3. And we need a horizontal divider. 2 of those. These are so awkward to work with because they are only a pixel high. Something like that, right? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I've built most of it. We need some checkboxes too. 1, 2, 3, 4, and they also need labels. That one and that one. Okay. Is that it? Yeah. Okay, it's this first one. Obviously typing in the label titles isn't actually relevant to this, but it makes it look closer, so let's do that. Classic. Yeah, I'll do them as I go. Okay, So back to this idea that Autolayout is describing the relationship between two views. Yes, selecting views in hierarchies in Xcode can be tiresome. So the relationship, what is the relationship between the label and the pop-up? Well, baseline text align has to be the same, and there needs to be a fixed padding between them. So let's do that. Relationship from label to pop-up button. We want horizontal spacing, and we want first baseline. Then that's cool. It's gone red, but we can deal with that in a second. It's red because we haven't defined enough constraints to position these two views yet. So we need to do a relationship between one of these views and the parent view to position them. As I said, I think this pop-up control is approximately horizontally centered, and there is a distance between this and the top of the view. So let's do a constraint from the pop-up to the super view, which could be top space and horizontally centered in container. Great, it goes blue. We need to set a fixed width actually for this, don't we? So this pop-up needs to have a... No, please give me the actual view, not the... There we are, fixed width. And this view wants to be, I don't know, 120? Something like that. And it sits almost, pretty close to being centered, but not quite. Let's offset it a bit. Not that much. Not even that much. Something like that. Okay, and then we need to do the next thing. So the multi-line label underneath, the description text. Again, we could position it how we want, but we can just do the constraints. We need to have a vertical spacing between the description and the pop-up and the control, sorry, so vertical spacing. And then we just need leading and trailing and leading against the super view. And again, we can delete the values. In fact, we can probably delete lots of values from the first controls we made as well. Oops. Oh, alright. Apparently I can't delete that 6 for some reason. That was weird. What was the align center X? Oh yeah, right, that's correct. That was the offset. I meant to do that. Width is to, yeah, 120. So those are fixed. Those are fixed values, sorry. That spacing at the top looks a bit big, doesn't it? Vertical spacing from the top of this control to the top of the super view. Top space. Standard is 20 pixels, and it's doing 20 pixels to the inside of the tab content. So let's try 12. Does that look about right? About the same distance? Yeah, could be. Okay, the next one. Again, we need vertical spacing to the view above it, and then leading and trailing to the super view. And isn't it great? You delete the constraints and then the views just fall into place. Oh, we've actually got that one into the wrong place. Let's do that. We even get the paragraph spacing. That's closer to a whole line. So that paragraph, that could be higher. 16. Magic number. And then the horizontal line. I'm actually going to select it in here because it's only 1 pixel high, and selecting them in interface builder is really hard. All the same things. Then delete these values so that we get defaults. And the same again. First baseline, horizontal spacing. Vertical spacing to this guy. Let's do leading to the leading edge to the other control. Then if we decide to adjust this somewhat arbitrary horizontal offset, there is no standard value, that's why. Then they move in lockstep with each other. Trigger. Oi, trigger. Okay. I mean, I understand some of the the complaints brought up by John and the other hosts of ATP. This is strange. It presents itself Interface Builder is quirky. It presents itself as a WYSIWYG editor, but it's not really, especially with Autolayout. It's a construction set where you're constructing Autolayout constraints, and Autolayout constraints are necessarily different when they're executed than when you are laying them out. Executed, it's not, maybe the resolved is the correct word. These guys are the same. It's the same relationships. Horizontal spacing, first baseline, leading. Oops. Vertical spacing. I'll just do leading towards these because it's easier to click. There are some performance issues. Obviously, there are very many different ways you could choose to set up the constraints, and there are performance issues with some of the approaches you can take, but it's not usually a concern. Let's delete a bunch of values and see if everything falls into place. Oh, hello. Please update frames. Cute. Huh. Okay, that's not quite right because there should be a space between those two, so we need to do vertical spacing between these two. Top space, I don't know, what is it? Try 16, magic number? Could be. And we may as well have a bottom space, I guess, to the view. Because that should be correct, right? Boom. Okay. I mean, we can type these in to face. Interface. Startup. Interface. Yes, please. show doc icon, show menu bar icon. Menu bar capitalized? No. Okay, maybe that's enough. Okay, so check it out. We've got most of the view laid out. Maybe not everything is completely exactly right. Maybe we want to tweak a few things. I think here the padding above and below the horizontal lines is slightly tweaked, but pretty much we've laid out the whole thing. We set fixed widths for those pop-up controls, tweaked the horizontal align slightly, the horizontal centering of these controls. But on the whole, we haven't had to manually align anything. I didn't zoom in once to check exactly the half pixel retina pixel alignment of anything. Everything will be laid out. Oh no, I did actually put a 16 in there on purpose. Everything will be laid out on its own using the default values. Oh, there we are. Better spacing. That was on purpose. Yeah, okay. So that's pretty much it. I did set, there we are. Misalign, please redraw it. Thank you. There are some other warnings here. We'll get to those in a second. Let's just see if this actually builds and runs and looks the same at runtime, because that was another concern. Boom. Okay. Can I just scale this guy to be exactly the right thing? Yeah, anyway, you get what I'm getting at. Pretty good. And no pixel peeping, no zooming in, no fiddling. Just lay it all out with Autolayout, set up the constraints, define the relationships between the views. Where necessary, for example, this padding there needs to be tweaked to be a different value. If you wish, you can put these larger spacings in above and below the horizontal bars, but I'm often not really fussed by it. In my opinion, Autolayout is how you should be building layouts in iOS and OS X for the most part. Of course, there are exceptions and so on, but on the whole, Autolayout will make your life easier. I hope. Oh yeah, I was going to look at the other ones. Okay, the warnings here. So we've positioned a lot of stuff. We get a lot of these warnings about leading constraint is missing or trailing constraint is missing, which may cause overlapping or clipping or whatever. Our UI at the moment works great in English with the strings that we've put in. If we use localization files with longer strings, either in English or another language, we would have problems. If it said some other behavior with a much longer name, that will get clipped. If the label behavior was much longer, classic behavior enabled, yes, classic behavior, not classic behavior, or something awful, these will clip. So you need to define leading space on these and trailing space on these, and set these constraints to not equal, not relationship equal, but relationship greater than or equal to standard values. And then, however wild the translation files end up being, the views will never scroll outside. They never get clipped by the super view. They'll always get squashed in here. And yeah, if we had super long strings, the strings would be concatenated, truncated. But at least it wouldn't flow outside the super view, which would look worse. Another warning we've got is that this is a fixed width. So if the classic string was really, really long, we'd have a problem. Text labels have content compression resistance priority. All the constraints are defined with priorities. We just need to lower the fixed width constraint just below. Priorities are a value from 0 to 1000. 750 is the default for horizontal content compression. It just is. So if I set the fixed width to 700, then that content compression goes away. And I can do the same for all the rest, and then the rest of these localization issue things go away. And I have a layout which will work with a right to left localization. It will work with much longer strings. It will lay out how I want in a number, in very many different situations. Oh yeah, we don't want resize, do we? Ooh, that's nice. Right. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful.